Something I hear a lot from people who are struggling to connect with God is that they're just burned out, right? They're burned out from doing a ton at the church and not seeing any kind of fruit in return. And it happens too much, so I want to help out with that. But first, I want you to know that I'm part of Whereyouare.church. We're a church that helps you reconnect with God through our practical content and our growing community. So yeah, let me get the elephant out of the room. We are a church. And yes, we have volunteers. And yes, we've made the exact mistake that this video is talking about. We've burned out volunteers with a lot of asks and stuff to do, and then haven't reciprocated with the level of investment that they wanted back. So let me just say, it's not who we strive to be, but yeah, we've made that mistake, and yeah, we know how it happens. And yes, I know what it's like firsthand because I was at a church as a volunteer in the past before I was a leader, and it happened to me too. So what I've learned is that in most cases, church leaders, they're well-meaning, right? The church that I felt burned out at certainly was well-meaning. We here at our church, we've certainly been well-meaning. So what I found out is that whenever there's a lot of work to do and a lot of people are needed to get that work done, it's really easy for leaders to overburden people and lose the personal touch. And I found out that this is the case with more than just churches too, right? You see this same issue repeated over and over again at nonprofits that utilize volunteers as well. But the reason I want to address this issue is because it's way worse to get burned out at church than anywhere else because it reflects poorly on Jesus. And it ends up pushing people away from more than just the organization, it pushes them away from Him. And maybe that's happened to you, and that's why you're here watching this video right now. But the bottom line is that, and this needs to be said, is that churches should be better. We are trying to be better. Every church should try to be better at this. Some churches, I'm sure, are perfect at this, but the majority of churches make this mistake. And of course, here's the thing. Churches are made up of people, a bunch of people. And so in a way, when I say churches need to be better, I also mean that people should be better. Christians especially should be better. Every Christian should be striving to emulate Jesus and allowing Him to form their character from the inside out. The irony about getting burned out through serving Jesus is this. Jesus Himself said, "Come to me, all you who are tired and weary, and I will give you rest." He also said, "My yoke is easy and my burden is light." This is also the guy who came up with the idea about the Sabbath, right? The 1 day in 7 where you rest. He also told us, though, let me bring some balance, to go out and preach the gospel and make disciples. So that takes a ton of work, and that's hard, and there's a lot to it. So is He giving mixed messages? Not exactly. Without breaking down all of the important details behind the statements that I shared with you that He made, it suffices to say that Jesus is telling us that there is work to do, but also rest and rejuvenation that's available through Him. So here's what I want to do. Instead of trying to fix the way that churches run volunteer teams, or me trying to somehow go back in time and stop your burnout from ever occurring, that's impossible. I want to address how you're doing right now and how to protect you from this happening ever again. So let me just make one thing clear. I got to start with this. Jesus didn't cause your burnout. I know that's hard to hear, and maybe it's not. Maybe for you it's already super clear. Maybe you have no qualms with that, but I just needed to say it because He didn't cause the burnout. People did. It's free will, right? Maybe for you it was the system, or maybe it was a specific person, but something was driving you towards the burnout. But hold on. I can't say it was all external. Maybe there was a little bit of your own desire for success or approval in there that had something to do with it too. I'm just saying. But whatever the case, one thing I know for sure, looking to Jesus, looking to Him, your disposition of your heart going and looking at Him and receiving from Him could have helped you maybe prevent this burnout entirely. And I know this because I've seen it happen, but also because of the Apostle Paul's experience. I want to share that with you. This man went through so much and yet was able to endure it all. Check out 2 Corinthians chapter 11, verses 23 through 28. Just real quick. He says, "Are they servants of Christ? I'm a better one." And then says, "I'm talking like a madman." He says, "With far greater labors, far more imprisonments, countless beatings, often beatings near death." He says, 5 times I received at the hands of the Jews 40 lashes less 1. 3 times I was beaten with rods. Once I was stoned. 3 times I was shipwrecked. Night and day, I was adrift at sea, on frequent journeys and in danger from rivers, danger from robbers, danger from my own people, danger from Gentiles, danger in the city, danger in the wilderness, danger at sea, danger from false brothers, in toil and hardship, through many sleepless nights, in hunger and thirst, often without food, in cold and exposure. And apart from all these things, there were the daily pressures and my anxiety for all the churches. So y'all, that's quite a list. That's a crazy list. And it's certainly much worse than what the majority of us have had to go through in causing our burnout. And I don't want to put this in here to diminish your experience. I'm sharing it with you because I believe Jesus actually helped Paul through all of this. Paul later says in Galatians chapter 6, verse 9, that let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. So Paul knows how weariness can feel. I believe that's why he just gave that exhortation. He knows how hard it can be. He's been through it. But he sets our eyes on the harvest, on the future, right? On the reward that we can gain if we don't give up. So I believe that having a picture of that, of this reward, of this hope, can help you get through almost anything. It definitely worked for Paul. But that's not all he had. Clearly not. He had the empowering presence of Jesus. And I know because in Colossians chapter 1, verse 29, he says it. He says, for this I toil, struggling with all of his energy, Jesus' energy, that he powerfully works within me. So y'all, here's the thing. Burnout is when we come to an end of ourselves and there's nothing else to power us forward. But in order for us to persevere, to get through this, we've got to have something more than just ourselves. We need the powerful presence of Jesus working in and through us to help us overcome the worst of the worst, just like Paul did. And I think it's really interesting that Paul, in that whole list, he never blames Jesus for all the things that people did to him. He knew the heart of God towards him was good, and despite all the evil that was happening, he knew God's heart, and he found God good, and he found him faithful, and he found him just, and he just kept doing the work of the Lord. So whatever you have going on right now, however you're feeling today, know this, and I can say this with a clean conscience, with a pure heart, and full conviction, that God's heart towards you is good. It actually says that he works all things together for the good of those who love him, and he has rewards for you like we just read. And not only that, but we know he wants to fill you and empower you to glorify him through all things. So if you right now, as weary and heavy laden as you are, would to come to him, look to Jesus, he will give you rest. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.